A New York Times Siena College poll out this week shows President Biden losing to Donald Trump by 2 points, 46 to 44% in a hypothetical matchup among registered voters. But when likely voters were asked that same question, likely voters, the results flip. Biden wins by 2 points, 47 to Trump's 45, which is to say this far out from the 2024 election, anything goes. And that possibility is revealing what New York Magazine's Gabriel Benedetti calls a glaring cognitive split at the top of the Democratic Party. While commentators and many strategists are aghast at Biden's polling slide and desperate to see a course correction, the president's aides at the White House and at re-election HQ give every indication that they consider the election very much under control. Joining me now is Gabriel de Benedetti, international correspondent for New York Magazine and the author of this week's cover story. Gabe, thank you for being here. I found it fascinating and intriguing. One of the first things that I think it bears mentioning is, according to your sources, no one's really paying attention yet. Can you talk a little bit more about what you heard as you reported out the story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the central dynamics here is that when you look at polling numbers like the ones that you were just talking about, but also a lot of the ones that have been coming in for the last few weeks in particular, they've painted a pretty dire picture for the president. His approval rating is pretty low. And a lot of the head-to-heads, with Donald Trump in a lot of the battleground states, the numbers look really bad for Biden. And that's led to a lot of hand-wringing, all across the Democratic Party. Lots of people demanding, well, what's the plan here? I talked to a lot of people within the White House, within the campaign headquarters, and a point that they made time and time again was, we have a year until the election, basically 11 months. And right now, most real voters, in fact, the vast majority, simply aren't paying attention. And why that's important is they're not conceptualizing this as a clear choice between Biden and Trump, which is almost certainly what it's going to be. One person who I talked to quite frequently for this story pointed out to me that they had seen one poll that showed that only 1/5 of voters, again, according to this internal research, even thought that Trump would win the nomination of the Republican Party. And that's, in a Republican primary that he's leading by a huge margin. So the central article of faith for a lot of people around Biden is the numbers that we're looking at right now on the national level and in the battleground states aren't really indicative of what it's going to look like in a few months, let alone in a year, because most voters just aren't conceptualizing this as a real rematch, let alone the idea that, oh, my goodness, we might get Trump once again.
Yeah, Jim Messina says to you, the average swing voter thinks about politics for 4 minutes a week, and they're not waking up for another 12 months. I mean, to be a swing voter, I guess. The other thing is you talk about the sort of resources that the Biden team has allocated to fighting the battle ahead. And I wonder if you can talk in a bit more detail about the way in which they're using outside Democratic organizations like the DNC to house some of their sort of best and brightest, if you will.
Totally. Yeah, it's a great question because it's a little bit underappreciated just how much they've been using the DNC. And by they, I mean the Biden operation for a really long time now. Even before Biden became president, when he was running in 2020, some of his top aides sat down and said, what is this all going to turn into once he becomes president, if he does win, and if he runs for re-election? So starting then, even before the transition into the presidency back in 2020, they started putting money and resources into the DNC and making plans for what this re-election might look like. So during the midterm time period, you had Democrats led by the White House, Biden's White House, deploying resources in a lot of the swing states and building up their data operations, digital operations, in an attempt to try and be ready for this re-elect. One of the deputy campaign managers said to me earlier this year, he said, while the Republicans are going through their messy primary, while everyone's focusing on other things, it's really important. This is the time that we are building up and really relying on, their allies like the DNC to be able to fight the fight once it becomes a one-on-one race next year. To give you an example, there's one guy who was running the digital operation of the Biden campaign in 2020. He left that campaign after it was over to go work in the White House. He then left the White House again just a few months ago to go work on this campaign. Now he's the deputy campaign manager. And when he walked into this job, he had 55 staffers waiting for him. They had been sitting at the DNC building the digital and data operation for the last 3 years.
That's not nothing. 55 staffers, 3-year program already in progress before Biden has even really begun his re-election campaign in earnest. Gabe, what is the Biden campaign worried about in terms of kind of outside X factors? I would ask no labels and their effort or third-party candidates. I know Cornel West is mentioned in the article. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of potential for chaos with a lot of these third-party candidates. That's definitely a major point of concern. But another one is just a more fundamental one, which is that they don't really know what the battleground is going to look like in a year. Often people said to me to make the point, well, things will get better. At this point in 2019, we didn't know what COVID was and Trump hadn't been impeached yet. And that's true, but these things can break both ways. And as of right now, they do have pretty big problems where there are a lot of Democrats, including young voters, who are either looking at these third-party candidates or are just not happy with Biden and might sit this out. So, a lot of this has to do with outside factors like, for example, the war in the Middle East, but it also has to do with the perception of the economy, which, a lot of people around Biden believe is going to get better over the course of the next year. But right now, simply, it's true that their message is not breaking through, that Biden's message that the economy is improving and people are getting more money in their wallets, that hasn't really broken through. And that's something that there's not an obvious answer for right now. They're hoping to figure that out.
Well, it is a great, fascinating read, and I will say reassuring to some people who may be hand-wringing at this moment in time. Gabe DeBenedetti, thank you again for your time and your writing.